Hello, and welcome to our discussion about issues of importance to the Caucasus. I'm Dr. Joanne Lisosky, author and journalism educator. And it's been a week since the Russians brokered a ceasefire between the warring forces in Nagorno-Karabakh region. While the shooting may have ceased, we are still a long way from peace. With me today is Mr. Richard Kauzlarich, former U.S. ambassador to Azerbaijan from 1994 to 1997, and joining us later will be Gultekin Hajibeyli, National Council of Democratic Forces, and Alex Raufoglu, U.S. Azerbaijani journalist. But first, we're going to talk to Mr. Ambassador. The map of South Caucasus has been permanently changed due to the successes of the Azerbaijani military. You were well aware of the war in the 1990s. How is this war different from 1993?
Joanne, thanks very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and answer your questions. But I do think I have to start by saying my greatest concern, and I think concerns of all people who are interested in this region, is that the killings stop. There are 5,000 or more people who are dead now as the result of this tragic and I believe unnecessary war. And I think our concerns have to be about their families and indeed all the people who are affected by this war. How is this different? When I arrived in Azerbaijan as the U.S. ambassador in the spring of 1994, the fighting was still going on. And I remember vividly the first trip that my wife Anne and I made outside of Baku was to the front, where we went to observe the refugees and IDPs who were living under trees, under tarpaulins, beside their trucks and cars, families, individuals. We could hear the artillery going off in the background. At the time, the U.S. was one of the few governments to actually be providing assistance to the IDPs and the refugees. And I went to one of the places where we were providing money to build basically very simple kerosene stoves that the refugees and IDPs could use. So, that was, I was there at the beginning for that. It was a tragedy. It had, it hadn't begun during my time there, but indeed the ceasefire that ended the fighting then was, as this one was, a Russian brokered ceasefire. What is different, and I say this with my experience as U.S. ambassador in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which followed my time in Azerbaijan. This conflict in 2020 is fundamentally different than the one in 1994. Then I think it was about Nagorno-Karabakh. And this conflict is beyond that. This is an ethnic war. This is an ethnic war between Armenians and Azerbaijanis. And if you just look at the tone of the social media exchanges, you will see why that's the case. The second thing, and this has just struck me in the past week, these pictures of Armenians burning their homes, schools, set aside the question of, how they got there and why they were there. I saw the same thing in Bosnia when Serbs around Sarajevo after the Dayton Peace Accords did not want to live next to Muslims or Croats. They burnt their homes and went to the Serb areas. So this is really, people who are, from the region may have a different take on this. But I just sense this is really fundamentally different, and that's what's going to make building a peace that much more difficult. Because what the Russians recall what has happened. This is a statement of 9 principles that the 3 presidents issued. There's no signed agreement. It does not make peace. It may, I hope, stop the killing. But we're in a fundamentally different situation than we were in 1994. And I think the deployment, what also makes it different is the deployment of Russian peacekeeping troops. I've had some experience in Bosnia and Herzegovina with Russian peacekeeping troops, so I know kind of how they operate. And I think that this is going to make, again, this situation today much more difficult to solve.
The inclusion of the Russian peacekeepers will make it more difficult to solve, or the fact that it's an ethnic conflict now?
Well, first, the fact that it's an ethnic conflict, but the fact that the peacekeeping force is only Russian. We can argue about whether that should have been the case or not, but the principle that motivated the Minsk group from the very beginning was that none of the major powers would provide forces for the peacekeeping operation. And again, back to my experience in Bosnia and Herzegovina, that may have been a NATO-led force, but it was a multinational force, and it included many different nations, precisely for the reason that you had this fundamental ethnic conflict between Croats, Serbs, and Bosnian Muslims who did not trust some of the foreign powers who were involved to be involved directly and unilaterally.
So you spoke a little bit about the burning of the houses and schools and cutting power lines. Right. And why is this such a prominent story in the international news media? Kalbajar isn't even one of the disputed areas. It's not in the Nagorno-Karabakh.
Well, but it's, hey, look, you're familiar with the news, that the news gravitates to war and destruction. And it's an example of that. I would have much rather had the news been President Aliyev goes to Shusha and makes a speech about reconciliation in the South Caucasus as a result of it. That would have been news. That would have been terrific news. Or about returns of refugees and IDPs, both Azerbaijanis and Armenians. That would be news. But the only news coming from the region now that we no longer have this obsession with these video images of drones attacking people, it made it look like a video game. Media loves that. Now the only thing to look at are these misguided people, who are just destroying everything in their path, precisely for the same reason that the Serbs around Sarajevo did that in 1990. I want to say 1995. They don't want to live in Azerbaijan, that is Azerbaijan, with Azerbaijanis. It's that simple. And that's tragic.
So once again, you were around in the mid-90s, so you said you were right there in the front. So I have heard that when the Azeris inhabitants left the region and were forced out, they left the keys in the door.
Well, that I don't know.
Did you see that? I mean, did you see a different response at that time from the Azeris who were leaving the region?
I was the ambassador to Azerbaijan. I was on the Azerbaijan part of that war. I didn't go into any place that the Armenians occupied, so I don't know under what conditions. All I do know is that those poor people had literally nothing more than they could carry in a suitcase, put in their back, put on a truck, throw in a wagon behind a tractor. That's all they had left. And everything else they left back. Under what conditions, I have no idea. But the fact is, this is wrong. There's no excuse for it. But it is reflection of the intensity of the ethnic hatred, I think, that's guiding people in the South Caucasus today.
So you talked a little bit about the Russian peacekeepers, and as you said, they have a history of not being very much peaceful. Can the Russians be neutral in this situation? I mean, they were obviously sort of on the Armenian side when the whole conflict began. So can they possibly be neutral peacekeepers in this region?
Well, by themselves, I would say no more than if this were a U.S. force. That would not be a good thing to have either. Well, let me say two things about the Russians. First of all, there are too few peacekeepers to keep peace, if that's what they were doing. I mean, look, 2,000 people. You're more familiar with the geography, certainly the panelists who will come after me than I am. But when the international force first deployed in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the NATO-led force, and the real estate, a bit larger than this one, but there were over 50,000 troops.
Russian peacekeepers.
Oh, 50,000 multinational peacekeepers. They had a clearly defined mission. And
most of them were American, right?
Most of them, I don't know if you want to put a number. Yeah, I guess you would say that. You had all the NATO countries plus Egypt, plus Ukraine, plus Russia. I mean, there were a lot of non-NATO member parts of it, but they made up. But there was a clearly understood mission that those peacekeepers were to accomplish, and it was a complicated one because you had to separate the forces. They were very successful at that. They had to protect populations who were either going back home or sadly leaving to go to one of the ethnic areas to live. They had to provide conditions so that development could take place, electricity restored, schools built, and all of that. And 55,000 troops, can't remember exactly the number, could not prevent those misguided Serbs from burning down their homes around Sarajevo. So 2,000 Russian peacekeepers in this environment who have literally been there just days, are not, even with the best of intentions, not in a position to prevent this sort of thing that's going on. Now, if their mission is to separate the forces, to help refugees return to either the occupied territories, NK, however you want to call it, and then protect these transportation corridors, supposedly that are going to be open. There's no way in the world they can do it with 2,000. That's just, even with the best of intentions.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. But I'm hearing that the Turkish forces may be joining those 2,000 Russian peacekeepers. Is that going to happen?
No.
Okay.
Why would you expect that? Again, if this is a statement by the two, the two presidents, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia, that the Armenians are going to agree to Turkish forces being deployed either in Nagorno-Karabakh or somehow in the separation of forces between the two. It's not going to happen. I mean, it just politically, it's not going to happen. I think that's one of the problems with this. The Russians recognize fundamentally they need somebody else involved in this. The Turks have a role to play, but it's not by putting boots on the ground in Nagorno-Karabakh or in the territories that are going to be administered under this statement. What you need is a truly multinational force made up of troops who are not from Russia, Turkey, U.S. probably, but are multilateral and can be staffed at a size that will allow them to carry out the mission that they're going to. But this just isn't going to work. It's not going to work with Russians. The Turks aren't going to be able to put troops in. I think it would be a mistake.
So, Mr. Ambassador, from your opinion, of being a former ambassador to Azerbaijan, aren't you relatively proud of the people or of the government of Azerbaijan in the way that they backed off and allowed this peace deal to go through, even though they were being very successful? Is this not showing a humanistic side of Azerbaijan in this conflict that's been going on for more than 30 years?
I see this as a person, not as a former ambassador. And this war was not necessary in the first place. There are no winners, there are no losers. This is a tragedy. And so I think we need to wait and see what people are going to do to build on the cessation of hostilities before we make any judgments about intentions, accomplishments, because the only accomplishment here that we should be interested in is achieving a permanent peace settlement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, so that these two people and these two countries can live as neighbors, and that's the only measure I'm interested in. Like I say, I don't care for the triumphalism that a lot of people are using. I look at the vitriol in the social media exchanges that are going on. I see the attacks on people who have, spent their professional lives working in this area, knowing the area, not from the region. And I'm thinking of Tom DeWall in particular. And Tom gets attacked for doing the job that he's been doing. That is to make the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh, the history and the current, well known to people in the both in the region but in the West. So I'm not going to jump in either praising or attacking anyone. I'm just saying that there's a lot of work ahead, and if we're going to spend all our time with our eyes in the rearview mirror, looking at history and not thinking about how do you build a new peace in this region, I think we're going to miss the next step in this process. This is not static. It has to move. If it doesn't move, then I don't know what to think about the future then.
What's next? Speaking of the future, Mr. Ambassador, what's next for the Prime Minister, Pashinyan? He is sort of being attacked by his own people for making this decision and joining this statement. He's having a difficult time communicating why he signed into this ceasefire. Will his internal problems maybe have a negative effect on this agreement?
Well, they can't help it. Let me put it that way. I mean, what you want are, at this stage, leaders who have, a firm connection with their people, and by that I mean not just to go to war, but to go to peace. Because that's the next step we're talking about, right? And I don't think, I haven't seen anything at this stage that would indicate to me that he's in a position to prepare his people for peace. I'm not sure if President Aliyev is able to prepare his people for peace either. Because what does peace involve? It involves a negotiating process between Armenians and Azerbaijanis over a settlement that leads to normal relationships in the South Caucasus. And I was a diplomat for long enough to know that settlement involves compromise on both sides. The word that Tom DeWall was attacked for using
was compromise. The word is compromise that he was attacked for using.
Yeah. So I don't think the leadership in Armenia is not in a position now to move ahead as they need to. And I don't know Armenia, so I'm not going to comment on what's going on internally with the current leadership and opposition and all. I know I saw those images of opposition leaders being arrested, on the streets, and that's not a good sign anywhere in the world. So, I think until we get to the point where both Azerbaijan and Armenia are confident enough to begin negotiations, I think you need to have a stronger international involvement. And it has to be an international involvement that neither party is going to like. I'm thinking again back to Bosnia and Herzegovina. Nobody liked, none of the parties to the war there liked the idea of the international community coming in and telling them what to do. But that was the only reason that we didn't have a return to war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. A strong multinational force, a peace implementation council that pulled together outside parties who were interested in the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and international supervision of refugee returns and of the Brčko area in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And that's very important because there still is this area that kind of lies outside, I don't know what to call it, kind of a unnamed area that isn't going to be subject to Azerbaijani sovereignty being reasserted and the Russian peacekeeping operation. We had a similar, that was the Brčko district in Azerbaijan. What happened was the international community had appointed an administrator for the Brčko region. I think you need to have that kind of direct supervision if you're going to ultimately solve this situation in a way that produces peace.
But shouldn't the international community know that the settlement was illegal from the beginning? I mean, we're not getting that kind of information.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I mean, the U.S. Recognized Azerbaijan, and I would say this while I was ambassador too. We recognized that this region was subject to Azerbaijani sovereignty. But that was to be resolved in face-to-face negotiations between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which never seriously happened during the 20-plus years that the Minsk Group mediation was operating. So you can't get from here to there without. Sorry, you got to negotiate, folks, directly. Not negotiate with the Minsk Group co-chairs, not negotiate bilaterally with outside powers. You got to talk to each other, and that's not happening.
But we're seeing now a settlement in the war zone while the peace talks are continuing, and that's illegal by international law.
Well, I'm not sure what. First of all, I don't know that they're peace talks.
And Kalbajar.
Well, right, but Kalbajar was. I'd have to whip out my 9 points, but Kalbajar under the statement was to be returned to Azerbaijani. What do you want to call it? Control,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that wasn't the question. The status of Nagorno-Karabakh.
Ambassador, what Joanne Lisosky is asking is, wasn't it illegal to allow settlement of Armenian residents in Kalbajar while the peace talks were going on, and it is considered a war zone, and United Nations Security Council was asking for liberation, for return of these territories of Azerbaijan. So why to give illusion to international community that this settlement, that these Armenians, poor Armenians, were settled there, now they don't want to leave their homes? Wasn't it illegal from the very beginning to allow settlement of Armenians in Kalbajar, in Agdam, and Lachin?
Well, I don't know that anybody allowed them. If you're, well, sure, and that was wrong. I mean, that was wrong. I know, from times that I've spoken out on this too, when people would come to Washington to talk about this. I'd say, what about the illegal resettlement of Armenians from Lebanon, from Syria into these regions? Sure, it was wrong. Nobody's questioning that. You know, it's. I'm not sure what the point is, other than to sort of transfer responsibility for solving this problem to the international community. While, you know, Armenia and Azerbaijan are like at a tennis match, sitting up in the stands and watching the players hit the ball back and forth across the net. You know, I'm not going to let people off the hook here. You know, it's up to Armenians and Azerbaijanis now to say, here we are, we own this mess that was created by this war. Now, what are we going to do together to make peace?
Is there any optimism at all that there will be some talks? I mean, we waited 27 years now. Is there a chance that Azerbaijan and Armenia will speak to each other? Because that's the only way that peace, I mean, outside influences, it can only do so much.
Yeah, you'll have to ask the leadership in both Armenia and Azerbaijan that question. Are they ready? Over this period, however many years you want to count, the opportunities were there for direct, serious negotiations, and neither party took advantage of it. And when things got close to an agreement, whether it was Key West or, you know, in France or Russia, one party or the other would back away. And the reason they did, quite frankly, was they had not prepared their people, Armenians and Azerbaijanis, for the need to compromise to reach a peaceful agreement. And, you know, that as long as that didn't take place, no, they weren't going to talk to each other. Will they do it now? I don't know. I'm not encouraged by what I hear from the rhetoric from both Yerevan and from Baku. I don't hear any voices for peace. I really don't. And maybe they're there. Maybe I don't pretend to be the the know-all and be-all on all of this. But who's talking for peace? Even Bosnia and Herzegovina, during the worst days of the war, there were people who were speaking out to end the war and live in a multi-ethnic society. I hear no one speaking about that. It's only about hatred of the other.
Well, and part of that could be that that's what the media is following. I want to really thank you very much for your time and great insights. Mr. Richard Kauzlarich, former U.S. ambassador to Azerbaijan, 1994 to 1997. Great insights from what's happened in the past and what's happening now. Thanks for your time. We're joined now by Gultekin Hajibeyli, National Council of Democratic Forces, and Alex Raufoglu, U.S. Azerbaijani journalist. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more, Alex and Gultekin. What do the people of Azerbaijan think about this peace deal brokered by the Russians just a week ago? Gultekin, are you there?
Okay, I'm here.
So you are actually there, right, in Azerbaijan?
Mm-hmm. Could you repeat your question, please?
Sure. Yes, I can. So what do the people of Azerbaijan think about the peace deal brokered by the Russians just a week ago?
The first, what I would like to underline, that Azerbaijani people are not thrilled and are not happy with this deal, which is negotiated, brokered between Armenia, Russia, and Azerbaijan. And I want to say that the term brokered and negotiated, maybe it's not a relevant term to describe the situation, the true nature of the situation. I think that it was a deal, it was a statement dictated by Russia, because in every provision of, in every sentence of this statement, we see the Russian presence and the Russian interests. Azerbaijani people very well remember that when last time Russian troops, the 11th Red Army, came Azerbaijan in 1920, it took 72 years to leave Azerbaijan. So that's why there are serious concerns among Azerbaijani people with the Russian troops coming back to Azerbaijan. And what deserves very deep concern and special concern of Azerbaijani nation, that it was agreed by Azerbaijani people, it was agreed by Azerbaijani parliament, and it wasn't discussed even in Azerbaijani parliament. We know very well that Azerbaijani parliament is not elected parliament, and we are not, we cannot talk about elected legislation system in Azerbaijan. It's we have no free and fair election here in Azerbaijan. But even that appointed parliament didn't discuss the case of invasion of Azerbaijan of military troops. I can call it the peacekeeping mission, and in my point of view, it's some kind of invasion. Because first of all, firstly, these are troops of the country, which is a strategic partner of Armenia, of a country which has occupied Azerbaijani lands. Armenia has an agreement, both military and political agreement with Russia, and Russia is protecting Armenia. Russia is under the umbrella of the collective security agreement, the organization, and Armenia is a part of this organization. The air space of Armenia is under Russian protection. Russia has the military base in Armenia, and this is military base is equipped with advanced military weaponry, and having the closest strategic partner and the closest the military partner of a country which has occupied Azerbaijani territory, which is keeping Azerbaijani territory under occupation for more than 27 years, and I think that we cannot call it as a peacekeeping mission, if to put it charitably, but there are some other reasons for concern. There are some aspects which deserve concern of Azerbaijani people. Russians came as peacekeepers. What their armament, their weaponry, what they have at their disposal, it doesn't prove that they implement a peacekeeping mission. Because after coming to Karabakh, every day we see that the armament of the peacekeepers doesn't look as the peacekeeping mission. It looks more, they are armed with assault weapons, with very serious assault mechanisms, and that's why we are very seriously and deeply concerned about the perspectives of this kind of deployment of Russian military forces in mountainous Karabakh region of Azerbaijan. The third point, what I would like here to raise, that this statement, which was called the peaceful statement, or the statement which serves for peaceful settlement of this conflict, is not legal from the very beginning, because according to Azerbaijani constitution, because according to Azerbaijani legislation, this kind of statements should be approved by referendum, by the Azerbaijani nation in referendum, and in this case, the Russian troops, the Russian military troops, or so-called peacekeepers in Karabakh, they have no legal status. They have no legal status, and we can't call even them as peacekeepers, because the peacekeeping missions they are granted by the United Nations, and we have some criteria. We know the criteria which these peacekeepers should meet. First of all, they should be unbiased, and they should represent the countries which haven't direct interest in this region. For example, the proposal, the initiative of the United States side about Scandinavian peacekeepers in this region was very relevant, and I think that it would be very positive step towards lasting peace in this region. If we had the peacekeepers from Sweden or from Norway, from the countries which are on the same distance from both Armenia and Azerbaijan, which haven't direct interest in both countries, neither in Azerbaijan nor in Armenia, which are nor biased, which don't take side of any kind, the part. In this case, we should talk about the peacekeeping process, but now without having the United Nations mandate, without negotiating it, even with the co-chairs of Minsk Group, even with the United States, even with France, in spite of the fact that we are not satisfied, we wouldn't be satisfied also with the France presence here in Azerbaijan, but it was not agreed and brokered with the Minsk Group co-chairs and Minsk Group itself. And one day we saw that Russians are invaded to Azerbaijan. The Russians are in Karabakh. And that's why, of course, people are not satisfied with this. People are not thrilled with this reality. And the next point, the next aspect which I have to underline and to emphasize, this is absence of Turkish presence here in the region. Of course, I know very well that Armenians are against this presence. Armenians are scared of this presence, of Turkish presence in the region. But we should forget that the Azerbaijani people feel the same about the Russian presence in this region. What Turks for the Turkish presence in for Azerbaijanians, the Turkish presence for Armenians and Russian presence for Azerbaijanians, they are almost the same, because I would like to reiterate again that Russia is the closest strategic partner, military partner of Armenia, and moreover, we know the history of Russian peacekeeping in Azerbaijan, in Karabakh itself. We recall very well, we remember very well that the Russian troops in Khojaly, they actively participated in genocide, in massacre against the Azerbaijanians in 1992, on 26 February of 1992. And the memories of Khojaly genocide memories are very fresh in the memory of Azerbaijanis, and we remember very well how Russian troops invaded Azerbaijan on the 20th January of 1990 and killed in Khojaly. They killed, together with Armenians, they killed 613 peaceful civilians, which are the innocent people and helpless people. And most of them are children, women, and elderly. In January in Baku in 1990, they killed more than 150 peaceful Azerbaijanians who didn't want Russian troops to come to their country, who wanted Azerbaijan to be independent country, to independent state. And having this kind of memories in the thoughts and the brain, it's very difficult to agree that it's very difficult to comprehend that this time Russians will keep will keep the peacekeeping mission. And moreover, we know the history of Russian peacekeepers in Georgia, in South Ossetia, Abkhazia. We know very well history of Russian peacekeepers in Moldova, And that's why we know, Azerbaijani people know very well that Russian so-called peacekeepers never brought a lasting peace and stability to the regions where they come. They normally they bring the frozen conflicts, and they preserve frozen conflicts for years and for decades, and finally it will serve only for one purpose: for the remaining of Russian presence in the region, for strengthening of Russian pressure on both countries. Before the Russian presence coming to the region, because of Russian, I call it invasion to our region, in last case to Karabakh, if we compare this situation in Armenia and Azerbaijan, we see that both countries, to more or less degree, were independent from Russia. They were independent from Russia. Armenia made some steps towards Euro-Atlantic integration, and it has signed agreement with the EU on a strategic partnership. Azerbaijan was on the bumpy way, but nevertheless, we tried to keep this process of negotiating with the EU, and Azerbaijan built very close partnership relations, brotherhood relations with Turkey, with our fellow the brothers from Turkey. But so we were, both Armenia and Azerbaijan, to a great extent, they were independent from Russia, and they were not so fragile under the Russian pressure. But now Russia has a very serious, it has obtained a very serious leverage on both countries, and to say frankly, Russia took Karabakh as a hostage and used Karabakh as a leverage, as a very serious leverage for both sides. It can pressure on Armenia, both Armenian nation and Armenian leadership, and Azerbaijani leadership and Azerbaijani the people, and that's why we absolutely now dependent dependent from the Russian actions, from Russian steps in Karabakh. And all the people of Azerbaijan, we are observing every day how Russian military forces commanders are meeting with the leaders, the so-called Artsakh Republic, separatist regime in Karabakh. People are, Azerbaijani people is appalled. We are outraged by this footage, by these photos, and by the news coming from the Russian's capital, where President Putin issues decree on the solution of the humanitarian problems of Karabakh, mountainous Karabakh, on the rebuilding of infrastructure of Karabakh. And we we contemplate how Russia is building its cabinet in the mountainous Karabakh. And to be honest, now Karabakh now looks more Russian than Armenian. Under no circumstances it doesn't look Azerbaijanian, but it looks more Russian than Armenian, and that's why we have very serious concerns about the perspectives, about the future of this region, and that's why I think that it was not the Russian presence in this region, and the Russian single presence, the only Russian presence in this region. It was the worst decision. It was the worst step. What could happen to Azerbaijan?
Thank you, Gultekin. That was really comprehensive on why you don't think the people in Azerbaijan are really thrilled by this agreement. Alex, what do you think? How are the people? I know that you're in Washington, D.C., but you do have family and friends in Azerbaijan. How do you are you agreeing with Gultekin as far as the people are not pleased with this agreement?
Joanne, thank you so very much for taking a look at this conflict from sharper focus, because this is a very critical time in our region, and critical time obviously requires critical minds. I did listen carefully to both Ambassador Kauzlarich and Gultekin, and I respect them both a lot. There's a lot to unpack here before answering your question. Obviously, we were talking about frozen conflict for 30 years, and now what we seem to have gotten recently is frozen peace. Russians, as Gultekin Khan mentioned, are the best players in this game, and Putin is a very small man in these big times. He uses a conflict to take advantage, as usual, to implement his own influence in the region. What they achieved, though, is, as Gultekin Khan mentioned, they increased their influence at the expense of trust and friendship. Both in Armenia and in Azerbaijan, I have to mention that. And in Armenia, what Russia told Armenians was, you're nothing but without us. You have no one to turn to without us. But they told Azerbaijan, you can achieve nothing in this region without us. There's a very small mind, and at this big time. I did listen to Ambassador. Ambassador and I will go back, and he's a man of dignity and is our friend of Azeri Democrats, and he perfectly drew a picture of the region. There's so many misunderstandings, so many mismatches between the reality over there and what we see here in Washington, D.C. I do want to mention a few points, if you don't mind. As I mentioned, there's a lot to unpack here. Ambassador talked about Bosnia and his experience in Bosnia. The problem is right now, this is 21st century. In 2020, people are leaving their houses behind, cities behind, and burning the trees, burning houses. There is no way to normalize that. This is not acceptable. That's number one. Ambassador, like I said, he's the best friend of Azerbaijan, and I have to highlight that. Ever since he left Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan never left ambassador. He covered Azerbaijan over the years, and he learned, every single sensitivity, every single point that we have been trying to make over the years. But naming Shusha, calling Shusha Shushi, while speaking to Azeri audience, I think Ambassador misspoke. And by saying that, I do want to actually prevent from, as it was talking about attacks, from Azerbaijan against, US-based analysts and international mediators. I think the ambassador just misspoke. He knows the map perfectly well, and I just want to highlight that. These kind of details that are exactly what we're talking about. He mentioned 5,000 people have died already, but what you and we discussed from day one that please try to refrain from repeating everything that Putin says. Do not trust Putin. There's a reason why Putin says what he says. He said that 5,000 people died in a week of one because he knows the region more than we all do. If you go out there and tell Armenians and Azeris that stop fighting because you killed 5,000 people, my impression from the region is that people don't want to stop. They are like, they killed 5,000, there's nothing else to lose. We're going to fight. Another disinformation, Syrian mercenaries. Where are they right now? Where are they? Everyone repeated that. So disinformation played a lot in this game. And like I said from day one, Russians sent disinformation before they sent their troops. That's what happened. That's what they achieved. And this is what right now we've got to get. And how we're going to fight back at this point, after this point, my personal impression is that right now, yes, there's a statement signed by both countries, and Russia obviously mediated. But this is just a statement. This is like Ambassador mentioned, this is not a peace agreement. My impression is perhaps Russians will try to take it to the UN Security Council, which where Russia is a permanent member. If they achieve that, they will get perhaps France in its side to run this through the UN mandate. If they do that, then we will all lose, because we can't have Russian UN mandated Russian peacekeepers in the region. That's why this is the best time to talk about that and bring all the perspectives to the table. We need to have sharp minds like Ambassador Kauzlarich, like Gultekin Hanım, like everyone else, to put all these stakes, all these carrots on the table and to discuss and show us what exactly we talk about. Ambassador blamed us on not, failing preparing Azeri people for peace. Look, try to message that. Good luck messaging, good luck explaining it to Azeris who were kicked out of their house and for 30 years never ever got a chance to return back and even to get that same spotlight that Armenians are getting right now. For 30 years, international community failed them, never talked about them. Good luck explaining it to them. Of course, you can explain it to Armenians because they achieved everything they wanted, and it was easy to prepare Armenian population for peace. But Azeris suffered, for 30 years, and now they got a chance, which is not the best option. I said from day one, our leadership failed us. Everyone failed us. Mediators failed us. Don't tell us that this is between you and Armenians. We have nothing to do. You had everything to do. You did not do that. Why? Don't even let me start. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I want to talk a little bit about what's happening in Kalbajar and the cutting of power lines and burning of houses. You both mentioned that. How do you feel about that? Why is that such a big story? I mean, I guess the ambassador sort of said it's media, it's burning houses, so it's attractive. But I mean, if you compare that with a response, I know I saw something that you wrote on Twitter. If you compare that to the response from 30 years ago, when the Azeris had to be the displaced people and had to leave the region, it seemed really different. I want Alex, if I can go back to Alex again and talk a little bit about that, why that is we're getting the wrong story. The international media is telling us the wrong story.
I mean, this is like some sort of like an edgy topic for international media. Obviously, they feel that something is different happening, and there are people out there normalizing it. As if we should accept in the 21st century those pictures that people are leaving cities behind and burning all the streets and houses. My point is, look, as I mentioned, we documented Azeris back then. They were given only 10 hours. Before, particularly very same place like Kalbajar, their videos still circulated out there on social media. You can take a look at that. The 10 hours Armenians given to Azeris to vacate the place. And within 10 hours, I spoke to several, like back in Azerbaijan, I was interviewing so many IDPs. There's one lady was telling me the story that she spent 20 minutes to run through the, woods. It was like, very bad time, back when the war started. It was very, cold at that time. She spent 20 minutes to find her way to the woods. And then she remembered that she had a key and she turned back. And while, she had only 10 hours to leave to vacate the territory, she turned back, she hung the key at the door. Because why did you do that? I did it because when, anyone like Armenians, whoever comes to this land, I want them to just use the key, open my door, enter the house. So not to break down my door, because this is my house. You don't break down your own house. If you do that, that means you accept that it does not belong to you, even if it doesn't belong to you. I mean, I use a phrase, maybe it was very sharp for many, that I call them vandals. Just go out and Google the definition of vandalism. That you're burning down the lands and burning down the houses and burning down the trees for what? So after this, I mean, it's going to be hard to build up trust between two communities. Ambassador made it perfectly clear that both sides need to live together, which I agree. I think that Nagorno-Karabakh belongs to Azerbaijan, but Nagorno-Karabakh has never been part of let's say has never been land of only one community. Just like any part of Azerbaijan, look at any look at Baku, look at Sungay, look at any part of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is the nation of diverse nation, and people from every single background, are able to live together. Armenians, some call this an ethnic conflict. It is ethnic Armenians who don't want to live in Azerbaijan. Let's make it clear. It's not like, look at, again, other parts of Azerbaijan. And there are so many reasons for me to criticize current Azerbaijani government. But when you have President Aliyev going out and making clear that Armenian population, they don't have to live. We want to, get our lands back and clean up this region from Armenian terrorists, who, entered there without any mandate. That means in international, if you take a look at any international, textbook, this is invasion and this is terrorism. You enter to someone else's house and then burn those houses. But those people, they don't have to live. first of all, let's start from there. They got a clear signal from Baku. If they don't know that interviews, in English, interviews are out there, they just can Google it out. And president made a statement. And I haven't seen anyone in Azerbaijan with, there's a critical mind coming out and saying, we don't want Armenians, in this land. Everyone tells me that there are Armenians living in Azerbaijan, there are Armenians living in Baku right now and other parts of the country. It's their choice right now to leave Kalbajar, to leave in other parts of the territories. And if they leave, they make their choice. They don't have to burn it down. So let's start from there, that this is a moment for Armenians to make that choice, to sit down and think about what exactly we're trying to do. We're trying to create here a long-lasting peace. If we stay there and stay in our house instead of burning it, stay in our house and live in Azerbaijan or whoever right now is going, Russians are here, they're protecting us anyway. So what's going to happen then? But I see there's so much, again, there's a disinformation going out there, and the people out there normalizing this behavior, this misbehavior. And then after that, I don't see any bridge left to be built after that. It's going to be very hard. But this is a time for Azeris and Armenians, both on social media and offline and online, to think about the future of the region. Yes, for 30 years, Armenians had a chance. For 27 years, they did in fact have a chance to do exactly what we all are suggesting right now, to invite Azeris back to their home and to live together when they were in charge of that land. No one brought it up. None of the international media ever mentioned, the fact that Azeris, like in Shusha, for instance, before even Armenians came, before even Nagorno-Karabakh war started, like 80–90% of Shusha population were Azeris. And just take a look at international records. I mean, I'm not talking about Khanken and others. Obviously, there are some parts of Karabakh that Armenians, were dominated, but other parts of Karabakh that Azeris were dominated. Just look at what Armenian president is right now bad-mouthing Shusha just yesterday publicly. Why? Because he knew that it didn't belong to them. Okay, then what were we talking about for 27 years? If you didn't understand the importance of that land, then why were you holding it and holding this peace and freezing this conflict and then driving us here to war? So now he's going out and bad-mouthing Shusha. But it was just 5 months ago, 5 years ago, if he came out, or an Armenian leader came out and said, hey, okay, we don't need this land because Shusha is not our territory, or whatever he used yesterday. I don't want to repeat his phrases just because I don't want to dignify what he said. But yeah, if you don't respect that land, just let it go. You could let it go and you could prevent the war. But look at today, right now, we have a chance to not do what the Armenians did back then, which is engaging in ethnic cleansing. As I mentioned, Karabakh belongs to whoever lives there, but territorially it belongs to Azerbaijan. And it's not just because I say it, just take a look at international books, international community. Look at what Ambassador just said. The US government has always recognized Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan's territory. We know that, but now what we're talking about is ethnic cleansing that Armenians had, committed and then they live there alone and they never let Azeris turn back, and no one ever mentioned it on the national media. And right now they leave the land, they vacate the land. Again, no one is chasing them because there's an agreement right now. And my understanding is that Russians are there. Perhaps at the very beginning, this helped Ilham Aliyev because probably he didn't want to get involved into ethnic cleansing. Perhaps it's my understanding that at some point, maybe like first couple of days, the fact that Russians are present there, it would prevent some let's say something that Azeri government wouldn't want to happen, let's say, because when our army enters there, they fight and they enter there, and obviously everything gets out of control. And so maybe this is a chance for Armenians to step back and instead of blaming and instead of international community, maybe instead of trying to mobilize against one side and picking a side, they would just sit down and sit back and think about the future of the territory. Just send out a clear signal to both sides. Okay, Azeris finally managed to get portion of the land back. and they're not engaging what Armenians did. So they are different. So we are back to 1992, 1993. Armenians, instead of burning the land and burning the trees and the schools, even if they build, they burn the schools. And then when I write about that, everyone is like, hey, this is not vandalism because they built it. I mean, really? This is 21st century. And I understand what happened in Bosnia 30 years ago, but this is 2020. And we talk about vandals burning the schools and trees and vacating the territory. Again, yes, they might feel that, you know, Azeris came and this is not safe land for them to live. But based on my understanding, that's not the signal that we hear from Azerbaijan. That's not the signal we hear from Azerbaijan people. Everyone says that we want long-term solution for to this conflict. But I'm going to repeat myself. Unfortunately, the frozen conflict turned out to be frozen peace right now. Russians, let's be clear, hijacked and they stole our peace that we could, you know, achieve. I understand this is not my favorite way either to resolve the conflict, but it happened, and we could achieve long-term solution to this conflict, but the Russians stole it.
Thank you, Alex. Gultekin, there have been some early signs of keeping the cultural heritage of the region, and they have not been positive from the news that I've seen. Is it accurate that the cultural heritage is not being protected? Putin asked for the preservation and normal operation, but is he going to get it? Will Russian peacekeepers care about protecting the cultural heritage sites in the region?
Mr. Vladimir Putin, the Russian Federation president, referred to the necessity of the keeping cultural heritage in the regions of Azerbaijan, in the conflict regions. Especially, he mentioned, of course, the regions which should be liberated within a short period of time till the 1st of December. In Kalbajar, the Lachen and Agdam districts of Azerbaijan. As Alex mentioned before, here in Azerbaijan, we never had problems with any confessions with any religions. Azerbaijan, in difference from Armenia, it's a multinational country. Armenia is the only mononational country in the southern Caucasus. And the only Armenians live in Armenia, but as far as Azerbaijan, here we saw a lot of cases when representatives of different nations, Russians, for example, were representative of Azerbaijani ethnic minorities, Muslim minorities like Talush, Lezgins, Kurds, and others. They rendered their lives for the liberation of Karabakh, for the freedom of homeland, because all they consider Karabakh and Azerbaijan as their homeland, and that's why they perished their lives for the future of Azerbaijani children, for the future of Azerbaijan, for restoration of territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, for restoration of Azerbaijani sovereign rights over the Karabakh territory. And if you compare these two sides, from one side it's Armenia with its mono-ethnic, the presence, the form of existence, and the second part it's Azerbaijan, the country which is very rich with its ethnic palitra, with its ethnic the lights and the representatives of different religious, different ethnic groups love Azerbaijan to that extent that they are ready to render their lives, perish their lives for the territorial integrity of this country. You could comprehend, everybody could grasp that what's the reality of this region. And to blame Azerbaijan in destroying cultural heritage of Christianity, of cultural heritage of Armenians, it's absolutely the wrong, and how to tell it is to call it, it's foolish to call Azerbaijan in this kind of behavior, because first of all, those churches which are allegedly Armenians, most of them are indeed of Albanian past. They are the part of our Albanian inheritance. This is part of our cultural heritage, because we are Azerbaijanians, also have very rich history in this region, in difference from Armenians, which came to the region after the Russian invasion, after the Russian occupation. And by the way, we know there was a real agreement between Karabakh and Russia, which was signed in 1805 between the Russian general Sisyanov and between the governor, between the ruler of Karabakh, Ibrahim Khalil Khan, and about the Karabakh joining to Russia, about but indeed it was agreement about occupation of Karabakh by Russians. And in that agreement, there is no remark, there is no reference to Armenians, because at that time Armenians didn't live in that territory. And all the heritage, all the historic heritage, cultural and religious heritage, these are of Albanian nature, and this is part of also part of our the history, part of our cultural past, cultural heritage. And that's why I think that it's not just, it's not fair to accuse Azerbaijan and to raise some concerns about some threats towards this heritage. And if we compare the reality, we can see very obviously what's happening, what's true indeed. From one side, these are Armenians who are living Kalbajar, which they occupied some 23 years before, and Armenians who are living Kalbajar by burning burning homes, by cutting down forests, by burning trees. This is the picture what we see from one side. And from another side, we accuse Azerbaijanians in not keeping the historical heritage, Christian heritage, and those Azerbaijanians who left their homes unlocked where they left the Kalbajar. And afterward, they left their homes unlocked, they left their keys on the edge, and Armenians opened their doors, lived in these doors for more than 22 years. And now living these homes, Armenians are burning Azerbaijani houses. They are not burning their own houses built by themselves. They are burning Azerbaijani houses, which were left while Azerbaijani had to flee Karabakh and when they had to escape from Armenian the aggression and threat. Because Azerbaijanians remember very well what happened in Khojaly when Azerbaijani innocent people and civilians, more than 600, as I mentioned before, Azerbaijani civilians, including children, including women and elderly, were killed with the assistance of Russian military troops present in that region. By the way, they were also peacekeepers. And that's why Azerbaijan is keeping in their minds, in their memory, the history of the Khojaly as well. They were escaping. They were thinking about rescuing and saving their lives of their children, and they could take nothing with them. Even they left even their money, their jewelry. Some families. It's very hard to describe the picture, but some families even couldn't take their parents because parents were too old to move, And that's why they had to leave, to escape in order to save their children. And they had choices. It's very difficult to describe me even in today to their situation. They had to choose between their children and between their parents. They left their parents in to save their children. And in such heavy circumstances, Azerbaijanians left Kalbajar, their homeland, lands of their grandfathers, the lands where they lived for centuries. They left Kalbajar in these circumstances, and they even didn't think about burning their houses or cutting down the forest. But now, you know what I would like to highlight? The Vladimir Putin, the Russia, which has serious concerns about the potential threat to Armenian, the Christian monuments or the heritage, religious heritage in Kalbajar. They observed, the Russians and Putin very quietly observed the process of burning Azerbaijan, or burning houses in Kalbajar, of cutting and burning forests in Kalbajar. But forests are also part of heritage, but ecological heritage. It's part of our life, and it's part of our environment.
So
and
the Russians they're not stepping in. They're not really protecting the region or the heritage.
And to my point of view, forests even much more important than the mosques or churches, because it's very necessary for the health of people, for the future of our earth, of our planet. And that's why keeping silence and observing how Armenians burn houses and how Armenians cut down forests and burn trees, how Armenians absolutely destroy the infrastructure of Kalbajar, the electricity infrastructure, other infrastructures. They are undermining everything. They are ruining Kalbajar. And Russian military troops are observing this, and unfortunately, they have Russians have no concern about this, but they are concerned about church, which were always about churches, Albanian churches, even Armenian churches, which were always under Azerbaijani protection, and moreover. And if I will, Ilham Aliyev, I would ask Vladimir Putin and the question does he concern also about the destiny of Azerbaijani mosques left in occupied territories, and now which are in liberated territories? You can find no sign of you can find no sign of the mosques there. These buildings, they look like I don't know how we can call it, ruins. They are just ruins. They level to ground Azerbaijani villages. And one very famous Azerbaijani economist who is now living in the United States temporarily, Gubad Ibadoglu, he described the one situation. He told us about one situation. He is originally from Fizuli, which was occupied by Armenian forces and which was liberated just recently. He said that I was looking for my village and I couldn't find the name of my village in tweets by president. And among the villages which are liberated, because in Azerbaijan, president tweeted and informed people about liberation of Azerbaijani villages from Armenian occupation. And yes, and Professor Ibadoglu couldn't find the name of his village among them, but he was very much surprised because the villages surrounding his own village were liberated. It happened, you know why it happened? Because Armenians destroyed his village to such a degree that they leveled the village absolutely to ground, And the soldiers, Azerbaijani soldiers, the Azerbaijani Salvation Army, which liberated the occupied territories, couldn't recognize their signs of village. They couldn't recognize their sign of the residence, because all the residential objects, all the infrastructure, the infrastructure was ruined and leveled to ground. It's Armenian behavior. It's Armenian behavior towards Azerbaijanians, but without neglecting this reality, and without turning a blind eye and deaf ear to this reality, to state, to express concerns about Armenian churches, I think that it's not sincere, at least. And I would like to reiterate that even if this, we consider, I would like to highlight again that we consider most of these churches as Albanian and consider them as a part of our historical heritage. But even if they are Armenians, according to Azerbaijani world vision, churches are the God's homes. And irrespective, this is Christian church, or this is Muslim mosque, or this is synagogue, we consider them as the God's home. And my nation, which is very tolerant, and which welcomes representatives of many regions and many ethnic groups here in Azerbaijan, to such extent that they are ready to perish their lives, they are ready to die for the sake of Azerbaijan. My nation always respects all the religious objects of all the religions, and I can imagine the situation when Azerbaijani soldiers are destroying Armenian. But with just one exception, in Agdam region of Azerbaijan, which was always populated by Azerbaijanians, and the non-Armenian, neither Armenian lived in this region. Armenians built some churches within last 10 years. And to my point of view, we can think about the future, or consider the future of this the churches, because Azerbaijanis living
we're going to have to move on. Thank you so much, Gultekin, for all of your information. And please join me in thanking Gultekin Hajibeyli from the National Council of Democratic Forces and Mr. Alex Raufoglu, U.S. Azerbaijani journalist. Thank you for your insights. I'm sure we'll be back to talk about this issue again and again. And I very much appreciate your information. Thank you, everyone.
My pleasure.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.